dust hung in the hot air near the well of Midian. Zipporah held her rope tight and watched the water line. She was Jethro's daughter, and she worked without complaint. But today, the other shepherds came early like they owned the place. They pushed forward and laughed at the girls. Zipporah set her jaw and stepped between them and the troughs. "Move," one man said. "No," Zipporah answered, calm but firm. Her sisters stood close, hands on the buckets. The men shoved again, and the goats cried out. Then a stranger walked up from the road. His clothes were worn, and his eyes stayed sharp. He did not smile, and he did not ask permission. He grabbed a staff from the ground and drove the men back. Not with rage, but with hard control. The shepherds cursed and left, kicking stones as they went. Zipporah breathed out, slow, like she had been holding fire. The stranger lowered his staff and looked at the girls. "Draw water," he said, simple and sure. He helped lift the heavy buckets like it was nothing. Water splashed over the stones, and the herd drank fast. Zipporah studied him while he worked. He carried grief like a hidden weight. She wondered what kind of man walks alone like that, and why his hand shook once, just for a moment. When they returned home early, Jethro frowned in surprise. Zipporah said, "An Egyptian saved us." Jethro's eyes narrowed. Outside, the stranger waited by the well, quiet as a shadow. Jethro did not like loose ends, even small ones. He walked out with steady steps and measured eyes. Zipporah followed, her sandals scraping dry ground. The stranger rose when he saw them, polite but guarded. "Why are you sitting here alone?" Jethro asked. The man glanced at the well, then at the road behind him. "I had no place to go," he said. His voice was low, like he saved words on purpose. Jethro looked him over from head to foot. "You helped my daughters," he said. "Come, eat bread with us." The stranger hesitated, then nodded once. Inside the tent, the air smelled of milk and smoke. Zipporah set bowls down and watched the man's hands. He ate like someone who had missed many meals, but he did not grab, and he did not rush. He chewed slow, as if thinking with every bite. Jethro spoke again. "What is your name?" The man looked up. "Moses," he said. Zipporah felt the name land heavy, like a stone in water. It sounded like a story already in motion. Jethro asked, "Where do you come from?" Moses stared at the fire, not the man. "I came from Egypt," Moses said. He stopped there like a door he would not open. Jethro did not press yet, but his eyes stayed alert. "Egypt is far," he said. "It is," Moses answered. Zipporah heard pain under the plain words. She reached for more bread and placed it near him. Moses gave a small nod of thanks, nothing more. That night, wind shook the tent cloth like weak drums. Zipporah lay awake and listened to the camp settle. She thought of the well and the way Moses moved. He fought like a man who hated fighting. He helped like a man who needed to repay something. Near dawn, Zipporah rose to fetch water. She saw Moses outside, sitting with his back to a stone. He stared into the dark, as if waiting for a voice. Then he whispered, almost too soft to hear, "I did not plan to be here." Zipporah froze, unseen in the shadow. A man who speaks to the night is not safe or simple, and yet he had protected them without asking a price. She stepped back, heart beating fast, as Moses suddenly turned his head toward her footsteps. Moses turned fast, like he heard danger in sand. Zipporah stopped, holding her jar close to her chest. The dark hid most of her face, but not her voice. "It's me," she said. "I came for water." Moses stood and looked away as if ashamed. "I did not mean to speak," he said. "The night pulls words out of a man," Zipporah replied. He gave a short breath that was almost a laugh. They walked to the well without touching. The rope creaked as Zipporah lowered the jar. Moses reached to help, then pulled his hand back. He watched her work, like he was learning her world. "You fight like a trained man," Zipporah said. Moses stared at the water and said, I learned in Egypt. Soldiers? She asked. Palace, he answered, then went quiet again. Zipporah felt the line go tight as the jar filled. She lifted, and the weight made her shoulders burn. Moses stepped in and took the jar with one smooth motion. He set it down gently, like it mattered. Jethro's camp was still sleeping when they returned. A goat bleated, then fell silent. Moses stopped near a low stone wall. I did wrong, he said, plain and heavy. Zipporah did not ask what, but her eyes stayed on him. Moses swallowed. I saw a man hurt another man, he said. I stopped it. His hand clenched, then opened again. And now I cannot go back. Zipporah felt cold rise under her ribs, not fear of him, but fear of what chased him. She heard hoofbeats in her mind, though none were there. Far off, a dog barked once, then twice. Moses lifted his head toward the road, listening hard. Zipporah followed his gaze and saw nothing but dust. Then a faint sound came, like metal tapping stone. Moses whispered, Someone is coming. Someone is coming. Zipporah held her breath and listened with him. The sound grew clearer, soft steps and low voices. A lantern glow moved between the tents. Then one of her father's men called out, Master Jethro wants you. Moses did not relax at once. He watched the shadows until the man stepped into light. Only then did he let his shoulders drop. Zipporah exhaled and felt her hands start to shake. They went to Jethro's tent as the sky turned gray. Jethro sat near the fire, already dressed for the day. His face looked calm, but his eyes were sharp. He pointed to a place on the rug. Sit, he said. Moses sat, back straight, like he expected judgment. Jethro spoke in a steady tone. You came to us like a man running, he said. I will not ask for every detail, but I must know this. Will your trouble become our trouble? Moses stared at the ground for a long moment. I will not bring danger to your house, he said. If danger follows me, I will leave. Zipporah felt a sting in her chest at those words. She did not know him well, yet she did not want him gone. Jethro leaned forward. Men say that and still bring storms, he said. He paused, then asked, Why did you defend my daughters? Moses lifted his eyes. Because it was wrong, he answered. That is all. Jethro nodded once, like he weighed truth by sound. Then work, he said. Earn bread, learn our ways. Moses bowed his head. I will, he said. That day, Zipporah watched Moses with the flock. He walked far from the camp, quiet and careful. He learned each goat's temper and each lamb's limp. He did not speak much, but he noticed everything. When a kid got caught in thorns, he freed it gently. At sundown, he returned with dust on his face. Zipporah met him near the water jars. You can stay, she said, testing the words. Moses looked at her, and his eyes softened. For now, he said, if your father allows. Zipporah saw how tired he was behind his calm. She also saw how alert he stayed, even at rest. And when the wind shifted, Moses turned toward the desert again, as if he still expected Egypt to appear on the horizon. Moses kept looking toward the desert, even when the camp slept. Zipporah saw it each evening, like a habit he could not break. One night she brought him a cup of water and sat nearby. The fire was low, and the stars felt close. You still think they will come, she said. Moses did not deny it. I killed a man, he answered, voice flat and tight. Zipporah's fingers gripped the cup rim. You did it to stop harm, she said. He shook his head. I did it in anger, he said, and I ran. Silence sat between them like a third person. A goat shifted in its pen and scratched the ground. Zipporah asked, Do you miss Egypt? Moses stared at the dark. I miss what I thought I was, he said. Days became weeks, and weeks became seasons. Moses worked like he meant to disappear into duty. He rose before dawn and returned after dusk. He spoke more to the sheep than to people. Still, Zipporah kept finding herself near him. Once a sudden storm hit the hills. Wind pushed sand into their eyes and mouths. A young lamb slipped near a sharp drop. Zipporah ran, but the ground gave under her feet. Moses grabbed her arm and pulled her back hard. Her heart raced, and she laughed from fear. Moses did not laugh, but his grip stayed steady. "You should not run like that," he said. "You should not let lambs die," she replied. For the first time, he smiled, small and real. That evening, Jethro watched them from the doorway. He said nothing at first, only listened to the quiet. Later he called Zipporah inside and closed the flap. "You see the man clearly?" he asked. Zipporah swallowed. "I see his sorrow," she said, "and his strength." Jethro nodded, as if he expected that answer. "He is a stranger," he said, "but he fears God." Zipporah looked down at her hands. Jethro's voice softened. "If he asks, will you refuse?" Before she could answer, a shout rose outside the tents. Men ran toward the well, pointing into the night. Zipporah rushed out and saw Moses standing still. A distant glow moved on the road like a small fire. The glow moved closer, slow and unsure in the wind. Men formed a loose line near the well, gripping their staffs. Zipporah stood behind them, eyes fixed on the road. Moses stepped forward, calm, but ready to move. A tired traveler came into the firelight with 2 boys. Their lantern shook, and their faces were dust and fear. "Water," the man said. "Please, we are almost done." Jethro's men eased, but did not lower their guard. Jethro came out and studied the stranger's hands. "No weapons," he said like a test. The traveler lifted both palms. "Only my sons," he answered, "and my pack." Jethro nodded. "Give them water," he said, "and food if we have it." Zipporah felt the camp breathe again, one long breath. The boys drank fast, then slowed, ashamed of their need. Zipporah handed them bread, and they ate with wide eyes. Moses watched the traveler, then asked, "Who follows you?" The man swallowed and glanced back into darkness. "Bandits," he said. "They take what they can." Jethro's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "Rest here," he said. "At dawn, go with our herdmen." Later, when the tents quieted, Zipporah found Moses alone. He stood by the edge of the firelight, looking past it. "You thought it was Egypt," she said. Moses did not deny it. "My heart still runs," he said, "even when my feet stop." Zipporah stepped closer, not touching him yet. "You saved us at the well," she said. "You work like you belong here," she added. Moses looked at her, and the fire caught in his eyes. "I do not belong anywhere," he said, almost a whisper. Zipporah felt a hard choice forming inside her. She said, "My father trusts you more each day." Moses looked away, like trust hurt. "What do you want from me?" he asked. Zipporah's throat went dry, but she spoke anyway. "I want you to stop waiting for someone to drag you back." Moses stared at her, stunned by the plain words. Then Jethro's voice called from the tent entrance, firm and clear. "Moses, come. We need to speak before morning." Moses walked into Jethro's tent like a man walking into a test. Zipporah stayed near the flap, listening to the low voices. The fire popped, and smoke curled toward the roof. Jethro spoke first, calm but direct. "You have been with us through seasons," he said. "You have not lied, and you have not taken." Moses said nothing, eyes lowered. Jethro continued, "My daughters are safe with you near." He paused, then said, "Zipporah is not a child. If you want her, speak it like a man." Moses lifted his head fast. His face showed shock, then fear, then something softer. "I have nothing," he said. "No land, no name that helps, no future I can promise." Jethro's eyes did not move. "Promise faith," he said. "Promise work. Promise peace." Moses swallowed hard. "I can promise those," he said. Jethro nodded once and stood. "Then speak to her," he said, "not to me." Moses stepped out into the cool air. Zipporah was there, pretending she had just arrived. Moses looked at her, and breathed in slow. "My words are few," he said, "but they are true." Zipporah held his gaze. "Say them," she replied. Moses glanced down, then back up. "I want you with me," he said. "I do not know where my road ends, but I will not treat you as a shadow. I will honor you. I will work, and I will not run from you." Zipporah's chest tightened, and she nodded once. "I will go," she said, "if you do not hide." Moses' eyes softened again, like he had been given water. "I will not hide," he said. Jethro arranged the marriage with simple steps and clear words. No loud show, no rich gifts, only what mattered. Families ate together, and the camp sang in the night. Zipporah stood beside Moses, feeling the weight of a new name. When the stars were high, Moses spoke close to her ear. "In Egypt I was raised in Pharaoh's house," he said. Zipporah froze, then turned to him. "You were a prince?" she asked, barely breathing. Moses nodded, shame and truth mixed together. "And now," he added, "I am nothing but a shepherd." Zipporah squeezed his hand, firm. "Then be a shepherd," she said, "and be mine." Moses looked out into the dark hills, and his voice went thin. "I fear God is not finished with me," he whispered. A sudden gust made the fire lean, and sparks rose like warnings. Sparks rose and died in the air, and the night went still. Zipporah watched Moses' face in the firelight. He looked far away, like he heard something no one else heard. She did not push him. She only stayed close. Life settled into a new shape after the wedding. Zipporah woke to the smell of bread and sheep. Moses moved through the days with quiet purpose. He laughed more now, but only in small flashes. Sometimes he would stop mid-step and go silent again. Months later, Zipporah felt a change in her body. Her stomach turned in the mornings. Her strength came and went like the tide. Her mother and sisters saw it before she spoke. They smiled and touched her shoulder without words. When Zipporah told Moses, he froze like a startled deer. Then he let out a breath and sat down hard. "A son," he whispered, as if testing the sound. Zipporah said, "God willing." Moses nodded, eyes wet but steady. "I will protect you," he said. The child came on a quiet night with a bright moon. The labor was long, and Zipporah bit down on fear. Women held her hands and spoke soft words. Moses waited outside, pacing like a caged man. At last, a thin cry cut through the tent. Jethro came first to see the baby, then stepped back. Zipporah held the boy to her chest, shaking from relief. Moses entered, slow, like he was entering holy ground. He stared at the small face, then reached out one finger. The baby grabbed it with a strong grip. Moses laughed, short and surprised. "He holds on," Zipporah said, tired and smiling. Moses looked up at her. "He will have a name," he said. Zipporah waited. "I will call him Gershom," Moses said, "for I have been a stranger in a foreign land." The words hung heavy in the tent. Zipporah felt the joy and the sadness mix like milk and dust. Days passed, and the baby grew calm and strong. Zipporah learned the rhythm of feeding and sleep. Moses carried Gershom on his chest while he walked. He would hum without knowing he hummed. But one morning, Moses came back from the hills, pale. He had been alone with the flock, far past the usual paths. Zipporah saw his eyes first. They looked shaken. "What happened?" she asked. Moses swallowed and said, "I saw a fire. It burned, but it did not burn up. It burned, but it did not burn up." Zipporah stared at him, waiting for the rest. Moses sat on a stone and held his head in both hands. "It was on the mountain," he said, "on Horeb. I went near because it made no sense." Zipporah kept Gershom quiet on her shoulder. "Did you touch it?" she asked. Moses shook his head. "I heard a voice," he said, and his throat tightened. "It called my name. Moses. Moses." Zipporah's skin prickled. She whispered, "What did you say?" "I said, 'Here I am,'" Moses replied. His eyes looked scared now, not proud. "He told me to stop," Moses said. "He said, 'Do not come closer.' He told me to take off my sandals, because the ground was holy." Moses rubbed his bare feet like he still felt that dirt. Zipporah held her breath. "And then?" she asked. Moses swallowed. "He said he is the God of my fathers," he said, "the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." I hid my face. I was afraid to look. Zipporah sat beside him, slow and careful. Gershom made a small sound, then slept again. Moses kept talking, like the words burned him if he held them in. "He said he has seen his people suffer in Egypt," Moses said. "He said he will bring them out." Zipporah felt the weight of Egypt enter their tent. Moses' voice dropped lower. "And then he said he will send me." Zipporah blinked, stunned. "You?" she asked. Moses gave a bitter smile. "I told him I am not enough," he said, "but he said, 'I will be with you.'" Zipporah looked at her husband and saw a new fear, not fear of men, but fear of purpose. Moses stood up like a man pulled by an unseen hand. "I must go back to that place," he said, "and I must answer what I heard." "And I must answer what I heard." Zipporah's arms tightened around Gershom. The baby slept, unaware of the storm in the tent. Zipporah said, "What did the voice ask you to do?" Moses paced, then stopped, then paced again. "He told me to go to Pharaoh," he said, "to bring Israel out of Egypt." Zipporah felt her mouth go dry. "Pharaoh will kill you," she said. Moses nodded like he already knew. "I told him, 'Who am I?'" Moses said. He answered, "I will be with you." Zipporah watched Moses' hand shake, then still. Moses said, "I asked, 'What is your name?' He said, 'I am who I am.'" The words sounded strange, yet solid like stone. Moses sat and stared at the ground. I said, "They will not believe me," he continued. Zipporah whispered, "And what did he do?" Moses lifted his staff. "He gave signs," he said. "My rod became a snake, then a rod again. My hand became sick, then whole again. And he said water from the river will become blood." Zipporah held Gershom closer, feeling fear rise in her chest. Moses went on, quieter now. I said, "I am slow of speech." Zipporah saw shame flash across his face. He answered, "Who made the mouth?" Moses said, "He said he will teach me what to say." Moses looked at Zipporah like he needed her to speak. "But I still begged him," he admitted. "Please send someone else." Zipporah waited, not breathing. Moses said, "His anger burned. Yet he gave help." "He said my brother Aaron will meet me," Moses said. "Aaron will speak for me." Zipporah tried to picture a brother Moses never talked about. "Aaron is alive?" she asked. Moses nodded. "In Egypt." The tent felt smaller, like the walls moved in. Outside sheep bleated, and a child laughed far away. Moses stood and faced her, eyes clear at last. "I must ask your father," he said, "and then we must travel." Zipporah stared at the sleeping boy. A long road opened in her mind, full of dust and risk. Then she heard Jethro's footsteps coming toward the tent. Jethro's footsteps stopped outside, and the tent flap lifted. He saw Moses' face and understood it was not small news. Moses stood and bowed his head. "Let me go back to my people in Egypt," he said. "Let me see if they are still alive." Jethro watched him for a long time. He did not ask about the fire or the voice. He only asked, "Is this what you must do?" Moses answered, "Yes." Jethro nodded once, like a judge who chooses mercy. "Go in peace," he said. Zipporah felt her throat tighten. Peace sounded good, but the road did not. Still, her father's eyes were steady, not afraid. He touched Gershom's head with a gentle hand. "Your son will need strong feet," he said. That day they packed what they could carry, water skins, bread, a few blankets. Zipporah wrapped the baby tight against her chest. Moses checked the straps again and again, silent and tense. He held his staff like it was more than wood now. When the sun fell, they left Midian behind. The camp grew small, then vanished in the dust. Zipporah looked back once and did not look again. Moses walked ahead, eyes fixed on the horizon. He did not talk much, but his steps were firm. At night they found a place to rest on the way. The wind pressed cold through the cloth and the rocks. Gershom stirred and whimpered, then settled. Zipporah watched Moses kneel by the fire, head bowed. He looked like a man about to face a king and a storm. Then Moses flinched as if struck by a sudden thought. He pressed his hand to his chest and whispered, "No." Zipporah leaned forward. "What is it?" she asked. Moses did not answer, but his face went tight with fear. Moses did not answer, but his face went tight with fear. He stood, swaying, like the ground moved under him. Zipporah reached for him, and he pulled back without meaning to. His breathing turned rough, and his eyes looked far away. A heavy dread filled the place, thick as smoke. Zipporah felt it press on her skin. Moses dropped to his knees beside the fire. His hand gripped his chest as if he could hold life in. "Lord," Moses whispered, and his voice broke. Zipporah's heart hit hard inside her ribs. She looked at Gershom, then back at Moses. A thought cut through her like sharp light. The sign, the covenant, the thing Moses delayed. Zipporah had heard the story since she was a girl. A child of Abraham must carry the mark. Moses had been raised in Egypt, far from the old ways. Now the cost was here, on the ground, in the dark. Zipporah moved fast, not waiting for fear to settle. She took a sharp stone from their pack, a flint blade. Her hands shook, but her mind stayed clear. She did what had to be done for her son. She kept her face set and her words short. Gershom cried out, then quieted in her arms. Zipporah held him close and fought her own tears. She turned to Moses, who lay still, breath thin. She touched Moses with the sign, as the command required. Then she spoke, voice tight with hurt and love mixed together. "You are a bridegroom of blood to me," she said. The words were bitter, yet they carried saving weight. The dread lifted like a storm passing. Moses gasped and sat up, as if waking from deep water. He stared at Zipporah, shaken and humbled. He tried to speak, but only a whisper came. "Thank you," he said. Zipporah held Gershom and looked away into the night. Her hands still trembled, but her choice was done. And in the quiet after fear, the road to Egypt felt closer. The fire burned low, and the camp was silent again. Zipporah rocked Gershom until his crying stopped. Moses sat across from her, eyes full of regret. He did not defend himself. He did not blame her. He only watched her hands and breathed slow. At dawn they moved on, and the air felt heavy. Zipporah's words from the night stayed between them. Moses walked beside the donkey, quiet and careful. He kept looking at Gershom like he feared losing him. Days later, a figure appeared on the road ahead. A man walked toward them with purpose, not like a thief. He raised his hand and called out, "Moses!" Moses froze, then stepped forward, stunned. "Aaron," Moses said, and his voice cracked. The brothers embraced like men who had carried years alone. Zipporah watched their faces, so alike, in the eyes. Aaron looked at her, then at the baby. "And this is your family," he said, soft with wonder. They sat together and ate what little bread remained. Moses told Aaron about the voice at the mountain. He spoke of Pharaoh and of Israel and of God's promise. Aaron listened without laughing, without doubt on his face. When Moses finished, Aaron nodded once. "I will stand with you," he said. "I will speak." Zipporah listened, but her mind stayed on safety. She watched the road behind them more than the road ahead. Egypt felt like a mouth that could swallow a man whole. As they traveled, Moses practiced the words he would say. Aaron repeated them, shaping them for people to hear. They spoke of freedom, but their voices stayed low. They spoke of God, but their faces stayed serious. At last they reached the border places where Egypt's air changed. The smell of river mud replaced dry dust. Palm trees rose in the distance like dark hands. Zipporah felt her stomach tighten as old stories became real. Then Moses stopped and turned to her. His eyes looked torn, like two roads fought inside him. "Zipporah," he said, "the elders must see the signs. And Pharaoh will be angry." He swallowed. "This may not be safe for you and the child." Zipporah understood what he meant before he said it. Moses looked down, ashamed of the pain it would cause. "I think you should go back to your father," he whispered. Zipporah stared at him, hurt, flashing like heat, and Aaron looked away, as if he knew this choice was hard. Zipporah stared at him, hurt, flashing like heat. "You want me to leave now?" she asked. Moses' jaw tightened. "I want you alive," he said. "And I want Gershom safe." Zipporah held the baby tighter, fighting tears. She had walked this road with him. She had saved him in the night. Now he asked her to turn back at the edge of Egypt. Aaron spoke gently, trying to soften the moment. "Sister, this work will stir rulers and soldiers," he said. "They will not care about women and children." Zipporah looked at Aaron, then back at Moses. "Do you think I am weak?" she asked. Moses shook his head fast. "No," he said. "I think I am marked." They stopped near a small resting place by the road. A few trees gave thin shade. Zipporah sat and fed Gershom in silence. Moses stood apart, staring at the riverlands ahead. His shoulders looked heavy, like he carried more than one man. Zipporah remembered her father's words, "Your son will need strong feet." She also remembered the fear in Moses' eyes at the lodge. This was not Moses choosing comfort. This was Moses choosing duty, even at a cost. Zipporah stood and walked to him. She spoke low, so only he could hear. "If I go, will you forget us?" she asked. Moses turned, eyes wet, and gripped her hands. "Never," he said. "You are my house." He kissed Gershom's head, long and quiet. Zipporah felt something break and settle inside her. "Then I will go," she said, voice steady. "But you must not go back to hiding." Moses nodded, and his face showed pain and thanks together. "I will face it," he said. They found men traveling back toward Midian. Zipporah joined them for safety on the road. She did not look back until Moses was small in the distance. Aaron stood beside him, a steady shadow. Moses lifted his staff once, like a farewell and a promise. As Zipporah walked away, Gershom slept on her shoulder. Her tears fell without sound, soaking the cloth. She had become a wife of a man called by God, and that calling now pulled them apart. Far ahead, thunder rolled over Egypt's flat lands. Zipporah paused, listening to it. She did not know if it was weather or warning. Zipporah walked with a small group back toward Midian. The desert wind dried her tears before they could fall. Gershom slept, then woke, then slept again on her shoulder. Each step felt like she was leaving part of herself behind. At night, the travelers made a tight circle of fire in packs. Zipporah stayed near the edge, listening for hoofbeats. She remembered Moses saying, "I want you alive." The words were kind, but they still cut deep. One man in the group asked, "Why do you go back?" Zipporah answered, "My husband has work in Egypt." He nodded like he understood, but did not ask more. In the dark, Zipporah whispered a prayer with no fine words. "God of Moses, keep him standing," she said. Days later, the hills of Midian rose like familiar faces. The air smelled of dry grass and goat hair again. When Jethro's camp came into view, Zipporah's legs went weak. Her sisters ran to her, shocked and relieved at once. They took Gershom and kissed his cheeks again and again. Jethro came last, walking slow, eyes already reading her. He did not ask, "Why are you back?" He asked, "Is Moses alive?" Zipporah nodded. "He is alive," she said, "and he is going to face Pharaoh." Jethro's mouth tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "Come inside," he said. "Eat, rest." Zipporah ate, but food tasted like dust. That night she sat outside her tent and watched the stars. They were the same stars Moses had watched beside her. Now they felt far, like silent witnesses. Weeks passed with no word. Then a traveler brought rumors from Egypt. He said the Hebrews were gathering to listen. He said Moses spoke, and Aaron spoke with him. He said Pharaoh's heart was hard like stone. Zipporah held Gershom and felt fear rise again. If Pharaoh struck back, Moses could vanish in one day. She wanted to run toward Egypt, but she stayed. She waited because Moses asked her to wait. One evening, another traveler arrived, breathing hard. He would not sit until he spoke. He said, "Strange troubles are hitting Egypt." And then he added, "People say your husband started it. People say your husband started it." Zipporah felt her stomach turn, like the ground shifted. Jethro raised a hand, steadying the room with one motion. "Speak plain," he told the traveler. "What troubles?" The man wiped sweat from his brow. "Water turned bad," he said. "Fish died in the river. Then frogs filled the land. Then gnats, then flies." He spoke fast, like he feared saying the words. "Cattle died," he added. "Boils came on skin." Zipporah's grip tightened on Gershom. She looked down at her son's face and tried to breathe. These were not normal rumors. They sounded like God's hand, heavy and exact. The traveler kept going. "Hail fell and broke trees," he said. "Locusts ate what was left. And darkness covered Egypt for days." He swallowed and lowered his voice. "They say Pharaoh still refuses." Silence filled the tent like thick cloth. Jethro's eyes stayed calm, but his jaw was set. Zipporah heard her own heartbeat loud in her ears. If God was doing this, then Moses was close to danger, very close. That night, Zipporah could not sleep. She walked outside and stared toward the distant west. She could not see Egypt, but she felt it like heat. She thought of Moses' face at Horeb. She thought of his fear and his obedience. Jethro came out and stood beside her. He did not speak at first. Then he said, "God calls men into hard places." Zipporah answered, "And women must live with the cost." Jethro nodded, not offended. "Yes," he said, "that is true." In the morning, a third traveler arrived with fresh news. His voice shook as he spoke. "They say one more blow is coming," he said. "A death will pass through Egypt." Zipporah's breath caught in her throat. The man added, "But the Hebrews will be spared by a sign." Zipporah felt cold spread through her hands. A sign on a door. Blood. The same hard word from the night at the lodge. She looked at Gershom and suddenly knew she could not stay still. Not forever. If Moses survived what was coming, he would need his family. If he did not survive, she needed answers before God. Jethro watched her face and understood without being told. "You want to go," he said. Zipporah nodded once. "Not to fight," she whispered, "only to stand near." Jethro looked toward the hills, then back to her. "Then we will travel," he said, "when the time is right. Then we will travel when the time is right." Zipporah nodded, and her hands stopped shaking. She packed with care, like each item could save a life. Gershom watched her and reached for the straps. His small fingers were strong now, not like before. Jethro chose a few men to go with them. No drums, no loud goodbyes, only quick work and quiet faces. They left at dawn, moving west where the sky looked wide. Zipporah rode with Gershom close and kept one hand on him. She tried to picture Moses standing before Pharaoh. She tried to picture him still breathing after it all. On the road, they met people fleeing Egypt. Some were Egyptians, pale and tired. Some were Hebrews, eyes bright with shock and hope. Their stories came in broken pieces. A night of fear, a cry in every street, a ruler who finally let them go, then changed his mind. Zipporah listened and felt both relief and dread. If Israel left Egypt, then Moses was alive. But if Pharaoh chased them, Moses was still in danger. Jethro asked careful questions and said little. He watched the horizon like a shepherd watches wolves. Days later, wind carried a new sound across the desert. Not thunder, but many voices, like a moving city. They climbed a rise and saw dust far ahead. It spread wide, like smoke without fire. As they drew closer, the ground showed signs of a huge camp. Ash from many fires, broken stalks from eaten grain, footprints by the thousands, pressed deep into the soil. Zipporah's chest tightened as if she could not take full air. She whispered, "Moses is near." Near evening, they reached a stream and heard shouting, not angry shouting, but cries of warning and joy mixed together. Men ran along the edges of the camp, calling names. Children darted between tents like birds. Zipporah saw banners, and she saw tired faces lifted to the sky. Then a man hurried toward them, scanning hard. He stopped when he saw Zipporah and Gershom. His eyes went wide, like he had seen a sign. He turned and ran back, yelling one name into the camp. And Zipporah saw people start to part as someone important came fast. People started to part as someone important came fast. Zipporah's heart hammered, and her mouth went dry. She held Gershom tighter and stepped down from the ride. Dust rose around her ankles as the crowd opened. Moses appeared, walking fast, staff in hand. His beard looked thicker, his face more worn, but his eyes were alive, burning with purpose. For a moment he stopped, like he could not believe she was real. Then he crossed the space and took Gershom in his arms. "My son," he whispered, and his voice broke. Gershom blinked, then grabbed Moses' robe. Zipporah watched Moses' hands tremble as he held him. Moses looked at Zipporah and said only, "You came." Zipporah nodded. "I came," she answered. No long speech, no blame, just the truth between them. Jethro stepped forward and embraced Moses like a father. Moses bowed his head in respect and relief. "God has done great things," Moses said, breath still quick. Jethro answered, "I have heard." Then he looked toward the camp and said, "Show me." Moses led them through rows of tents and cooking fires. Zipporah saw people with empty eyes now full of light. She heard songs rise and fall, simple and strong. She saw lamb bones by the fire pits and thought of that night. She felt a shiver and kissed Gershom's head. They reached a larger tent where elders sat. Aaron was there, speaking to a group of men. He saw Zipporah and paused, then smiled with tired joy. "Peace to you," he said. Zipporah answered, "Peace, if Pharaoh stays behind us." Moses' face tightened at that. He pulled them aside, away from listening ears. "Pharaoh chased us," he said. "We are trapped by the sea." Zipporah's stomach sank. "Trapped?" she echoed. Moses pointed toward the west. Even from here, Zipporah could smell salt on the wind. "The sea is in front," he said. "Pharaoh's army is behind." Zipporah heard panic ripple through the camp like a wave. She saw women clutching children, men arguing in tight circles. Moses' jaw was set, but his eyes stayed steady. "God will make a way," he said, as if he had heard it already. Zipporah wanted to believe, but fear pressed hard again. Then a distant rumble rolled over the sand, low and growing, and the ground seemed to tremble under their feet. The ground seemed to tremble under their feet. A shout rose from the edge of the camp. "Dust!" someone cried. "Chariots!" Zipporah felt Gershom tense against her, sensing the fear. People ran in wild lines, then crashed into each other. Some screamed at Moses, faces twisted by panic. "Were there no graves in Egypt?" they shouted. "Why did you bring us here to die?" Moses stood on a small rise, holding his staff high. "Do not be afraid," he called, voice strong in the noise. "Stand firm, and you will see the Lord save you." Zipporah watched his shoulders stay steady as the crowd shook. She saw Aaron move beside him, ready to speak if Moses fell silent. Wind began to blow from the east, cold and hard. It pushed sand into eyes and mouths. Tents snapped and ropes creaked. The sea ahead started to roar like a living thing. Zipporah could not see it well, but she felt its power. Moses walked toward the water's edge with slow steps. He lifted the staff and held it out over the sea. For a moment, nothing happened. Only wind and fear and the sound of chariots growing closer. Then the water began to pull back, not like a gentle tide, but like a door opening. Dark walls of water rose on both sides, held in place by wind. A long path of wet ground appeared, shining under moonlight. People froze, staring, unable to move. Moses turned and shouted, "Go through!" His voice cut through shock like a blade. Families grabbed hands and stepped onto the path. Some slipped and fell, then got up and kept moving. Zipporah took Gershom and stepped forward, knees shaking. The walls of water stood high, close enough to touch. She heard the sea groan and hiss beside her. Gershom pressed his face into her neck and held tight. Zipporah kept walking, one step, then another, refusing to look back. Halfway through, she heard a new sound behind them, metal wheels on wet ground. Pharaoh's army had entered the path. Their torches flickered between the water walls like angry eyes. Zipporah's breath came fast as she pushed forward, and she saw the far shore ahead, still too far away. Zipporah saw the far shore ahead, still too far away. She kept moving, feet sore on the wet ground. Moses stood near the back, watching the people pass. His face was hard with focus, but his hands stayed steady. Aaron helped the slow ones, lifting children onto his shoulders. At last, Zipporah stepped onto dry land and almost fell. She held Gershom close and turned to look. The last families were still crossing, running now. Behind them, chariots pushed forward in tight lines. Their horses screamed in fear of the water walls. Moses lifted his staff again, higher than before. The wind shifted, then stopped like a held breath. For one long beat, the sea seemed to hang in place. Then the water crashed down with a roar that shook the ground. Zipporah grabbed Gershom and backed away fast. She did not watch long. She only heard the end. Silence followed, broken by small sobs and shocked laughter. People sank to their knees in the sand. Some hugged each other like they could not let go. Miriam began to sing, and others joined her song. The sound rose into the open sky, strong and clean. Zipporah found Moses standing alone for a moment. His shoulders sagged like the fight had left him at last. She walked to him and placed Gershom in his arms. Moses held the boy and closed his eyes. Zipporah said, "You did not run." Moses whispered, "Not this time." Jethro came near and watched the sea in silence. His eyes were wet, but his voice stayed calm. "Now I know," he said, "your God is greater than all." Zipporah felt warmth spread through her chest, slow and real. The camp moved on, but the fear was different now. It was still there, yet hope had a place beside it. Zipporah walked with the people and kept her family close. She learned to live with wonder, one day at a time. Takeaways lived in their steps, not in loud words. God sees pain, even when it lasts a long time. Courage can be quiet, but it still changes the road. Family love can hold steady, even when calling pulls hard.